Being dealt out of the deal are over in this country as long as I'm president.
Working class people are hurting. For decades, we've been ignored. This election's about who will stand up with us and who will stand in our way. Donald Trump is a scab. Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents. The UAW is endorsing Joe Biden for President of the United States.
What a pleasant voice. Well, except when he's talking about the billionaires supporting Donald Trump. Does he know that the billionaires who don't care about working people are all supporting Biden? Among them, his own governor, J.B. Pritzker. Well, the truth is, Biden's electric vehicle push, that 60% of U.S. vehicles will be electrically powered by 2032, that's the dream, that would put tens of thousands of American auto jobs at risk. It would effectively kill our auto industry. But the union chief doesn't give a rip. Joining me now, former Democratic Congresswoman from Hawaii and Fox News contributor Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi, what's the union's real motivation here? The guy who renegotiated NAFTA to help protect the U.S. auto industry is now the devil who's standing with the billionaires who oppose that? What's that about?
Laura, I think what we're seeing is how more and more of these unions who were founded, whose existence is supposed to be, whose mission is to fight for working people, exist instead to serve themselves and their friends in the Democrat elite in the swamp of Washington. I think it's very telling when you hear Joe Biden say that he's the most pro-union president ever. That's a very clear distinction from a president who says they're the most pro-American people president in history. A union doesn't exactly represent the interests of the American people or even their members, which is why I've experienced over time how unions who choose the Democrat elite, they choose the Democrats in power over the interests of the working people, of even their membership. Their membership is going to vote in their own self-interest. They're not stupid. They see how the Biden-Harris administration time after time has set their policies in place that has created a terrible economy, that has created a higher cost of living, that has created an open border that is making our country far less safe, policies that support the criminals rather than those who are victims of crime, who put our law enforcement who are out there working to keep our communities safe in the back seat saying, no, we don't have your back when you put your lives on the line for us every day. I could continue to go on and on about how this administration, unfortunately, is not putting the interests of the American people or working men and women in this country first. They're putting their own selfish interests, their own power first. And this is where they tie into their friends in so many of these unions whose existence is based upon that connection. How do we stay in power and get more power and not thinking about the well-being of the people?
Yeah, and it's the same thing that we see with the teachers' unions. Like, I know a lot of teachers who are they're like, oh, they make me pay these union dues. I essentially have to pay. You don't have to, the Supreme Court case, but you're really kind of shamed if you don't. And they don't even, as you said, represent the union members themselves, because a lot of the stuff they push for on the teachers union side end up ultimately hurting public schools, hurting the competitiveness of the schools. And the same thing in this case. By the way, Elon Musk, Tulsi, sent out a tweet yesterday warning the Biden administration about what's going to happen, warning the people of the country, I should say, what would happen if Biden gets in power for another term, because the tariffs will probably be lifted. And he said if there are no trade barriers established, they will pretty much demolish most other car companies in the world, speaking of China. And look, we know that in a second term, Biden's going to be able to do anything he wants. And he's always doing whatever he does, it's always for China's benefit.
Yeah, Laura, you mentioned the teachers union as an example. My father-in-law, he just retired from being a public school teacher, and I've heard story after story from him and so many others who choose this honorable job, which is often, unfortunately, thankless, to go and teach our children. But instead of having people who are supposed to fight for them, you see them out pushing this so-called woke agenda, these insane narratives, pushing these grotesque R-rated books into our kids' classrooms, trying to push this ulterior agenda that serves their interests. Again, rather than saying, hey, we should stand for the education of our kids. We should stand for those who are dedicating their time to serving our children. You can look across many of these industries. Unfortunately,
Right.
they've lost the leadership that they need. And this is where I encourage people, vote based on what is in the best interest of the American people. The contrast is very clear.
Yeah, and real median wages, we're doing a lot better under Trump without that inflation than they're doing right now. Buying power of all those auto workers much decreased because of Biden's policies. Tulsi, as always, so great to see you. And the great defenders of democracy, they're in meltdown.